Podcast. Joining me this week is someone making their 71st pod appearance. Welcome back to Mr. Connor Cronin.
Good to be back. Good to be talking about a win this time out as well. So
I
looking
know
forward
there
to
haven't
that.
been a whole lot of those this season on these pods, unfortunately. But yeah, indeed. So let's turn our attention to that feature match of the week. Here's a generic 80-word summary of the match. Ireland kicked off their Quilter Nation series with a 41-10 win over Japan at Aviva Stadium. Tommy O'Brien marked his first home cap with a try and player of the match honours, while Tom Farrell impressed on debut. Jack Crowley opened the scoring before Nick Timoney, Andrew Porter, Gus McCarthy, Paddy McCarthy, and O'Brien all crossed. Japan showed flair but lacked finishing precision. Ireland's bench added impact, and Sam Prendergast converted three second-half tries. The hosts bounced back from last week's loss, blending debut energy with clinical execution. Now, obviously, we'll go into a bit more detail than that. And to kick things off, Connor wants to go a bit retro when it comes to our rap pods and harp on the match one half at a time. And to be fair, it was kind of a test of two halves, with things certainly not looking good after the opening 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean your generic 80-word summary there uses the word clinical. Not a word I would use for the first 40 minutes of that game of rugby. Um, it's funny, you come into any game and there is always going to be a little bit of hangover from the previous game. Whether that is, we've come in from the previous game's win and we're really positive and we're buzzing off that, or in a match like this, we're coming off the back of a loss and now we have things to prove and we have, we're a different team to the one named last week, and some of us, this is our opportunity to put our hands up and say we want to be there for other games as well. Um, I'm gonna say that there's not many people covered themselves in glory in that first half in particular. I think the headspace of coming in off a loss is it's challenging to deal with. But when I started taking some notes on the game, having a rewatch earlier, um, and literally I just ended up splitting the page down the middle to look at what was good and what was bad for both teams. And I think in the first maybe 10 minutes or so, you could say that Japan came at us with a plan. They had a desire to do particular things and to execute those things in such a way to cause us problems. And when you look throughout the game at the aerial battle, that is something we should be winning every time. Um, Donal Lenihan, in all his talk about South Africa yesterday, GC Petty cannot wait for the last test of the series to be on comms for that. I'm just talking about South Africa for 80 minutes. But in all his talk about South Africa, also mentioned Kildare and the fact that there was, is it five players had come from Kildare in the starting 15, and the Gaelic football background was what he was trying to get at. We should be winning aerial battles all over the pitch, not
And
just we utterly failed at that throughout the first half. I just kept seeing these moments where Japanese players were getting up ahead of us. I think our defense in the first half was poor. I don't know what I didn't go looking at stats for this. I didn't go looking to see how many defenders did they beat, but they had a very clear plan to pull in defenders with these really direct runners. They were just coming from a little bit deep and coming in hard and running at us, meaning it was taking a couple of players. And then there's a third player kind of saying, well, I'll have a look at this ruck as well and see what I can do with it. And suddenly we've got three players in a ruck, and that's creating space where, because they're going round the corner a lot, or maybe um, out to a pod and then one more passing in again. So that they're constantly pulling the defense narrower and narrower and narrower and creating a lot of space out wide. There's a couple of opportunities they created in that first half going out wide. One got called back for a forward pass. Um, One where we got lucky that the winger kind of looked and said, "Oh, player, I better pass this." And when he did pass, um, was passing it to a slightly slower player and giving a bit more room for some of our backs to get back and try and make the tackle. But they clearly had a plan. They weren't necessarily able to execute it, I think, the way they might have wanted to, but they were pulling us in and in and in, and then looking for the space out wide. Um, when you look at just their overall aggression for the game, Japan really seemed to be up for it. They wanted to come out and have a proper game. They thought, here's a scalp we could possibly take. Now I know they've got Wales next week, so maybe that's part of their mentality as well, where they're saying, no matter what happens this week, if we show what we can do a little bit this week, we'll have all the confidence to go forward for it next week as well. And we can talk more about that afterwards if we want. But I just felt in general, Japan, they were really, really strong in what they were doing. They had a plan, they had structure, and things were going well for them. I mean, but I think too many mistakes, too sloppy, definitely too many penalties. Um, and give I'll give Stockdale a little bit of leeway on his yellow card because the height difference is extraordinary there. He's got 9 or 10 inches on the guy, and he is always trying to get down, but he does make head contact. So it is definitely a yellow card. I don't think it even needed to go to the bunker. I think the referee could have mitigated that himself. That's a discussion for another day. But it just seemed like a sloppy and poor first half where not enough players were saying that they wanted to play next week against Australia.
Yeah, it was a frustrating first half, particularly after last week. I mean, we were saying in our preview how a bit like the zebra game for Leinster, recently, and the zebra game back in May. There wasn't a whole lot Ireland could do positively to sort of put that behind us, but obviously there was a lot they could do wrong, and from the first line out going awry and taking so long to get on, to get the first try. I mean, you could look even on those two tries. They were great finishes, definitely, but you could be glass half empty as well on those two finishes because the first one we didn't get the first try until we had the extra man, and the second try, you were talking about sloppy hands. It took a dropped ball to create the kind of the confusion and for Ryan to get the offload and Timoney to power through. Now it was a great finish, and Timoney's try scoring record for Ireland is phenomenal. He's played like what 5 tests in 5 years and got 5 tries or something like that. But it was a great finish. But overall, we came out of that halftime, and I mean, I usually try to put a positive spin in it, but I couldn't, because it was the following on from last week, and the systems weren't working, the systems weren't operating. That line out, it's I think the double pump one I think was the most frustrating because that shows a complete, and it's not totally Ronan Kelleher's fault either. It's the call goes in, and they should have done this 1,000 times in training. They know what to do. They should know what they're. But it was the
Yeah.
double pump suggests a misunderstanding of who's going where. I mean, he obviously didn't see in front of him what he expected to see, which is why he held it back. And I'm not trying to take all the blame off of him either, but it's the overall systems that's not working there. And but again, I think you were right to talk about Japan positively. They were keen to set. It was the tempo they were setting. I think that was most impressive.
Yeah.
If they show that against Wales next week, they've got a really good chance I don't even know if you could call it an upset at this stage, but it was the relentless at taking quick throws, picking up and spotting a lack of a pillar at a ruck and little things like that, and just going quickly at us. And it was not trying not to allow our defense to settle, because once it did, it actually, our defense was doing pretty well. And we'll talk about how the second half went later, but it was a real challenge, and it was struggling with it. I know it's not the first team. You could look at things like got Craig Casey. He's back from injury. I mean, he's a quality player that usually make things happen. You'd expect him and Crowley to be a perfect pairing. For Ireland, having played so much together. But like I say, he is coming back from injury. So and there was a couple of positions that weren't as they usually were, but still, you just got that feeling at halftime that it was they used the word undercooked last week in Chicago, even before a ball was kicked. But there was still that impression that that's what we were going into the break.